Welcome back. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit of baseball with all you fine people today. And the sad reality that, yeah, we're now dealing with a lockout for the first time since 1990. And I remember that lockout. I remember it well. I remember the 1994 strike, too. And it's been an uneasy peace between the owners and the players. You can tell they don't necessarily like one another, but players are making record amounts of money, right? At like the ridiculous amounts of money that were being shelled out a week ago, or I don't know, 4 days ago. It is crazy to me that that kind of money is being shelled out on contracts, and now here we are with the owners saying, "Well, we have to lock them out because." And there's squabbling about dropping the amount of years that they have to play before they go to unrestricted free agency, and have their rights to go wherever they want. I think the biggest issue I've always had, well, not always, but in the last couple of decades, the biggest problem I've had with baseball is the huge disparity between a New York Yankees team and like Kansas City, as an example, or uh, you know uh, the Marlins. Marlins another good example. Teams that make a ton of money can print their own money, as opposed to other teams that can't. And so the owners are talking about, oh, well, you can't drop the amount of time it takes before these guys are free agents, because then what's going to happen to the small markets? Really? Like, there's a part of me that says, seriously, you guys are worried about small markets? I don't think so. So I haven't seen anything saying anything about a salary cap, which would make some sense if they were really worried about fiscal responsibility. But when I see the ridiculous amounts of money that are being handed out, and really and truly, I mean, I always talk about hockey, but the amount of money that hockey players make compared to baseball players is very little. And it feels like in baseball, more than almost anywhere else, a guy will have one good year, he becomes a free agent, and then he cashes in. And big time cashes in. And you have, like, luxury tax and everything. That's fine. That's fine. They'll pay it. I think that's been the biggest thing for me, though, with baseball, is the imbalance between the haves and have-nots. The biggest imbalance, and it's not really on the players to change that. It's on the owners and on the league to change it. And it definitely feels like it's all about, okay, well, what makes the most amount of money? So the players are saying too that, if owners are willing to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to buy a small market Major League Baseball team, then they should be willing to invest to prop it up and to improve things, so that maybe they're not one of the have-nots, rather than taking revenue sharing. There's actual money in there to take out of revenue sharing. Players are saying they should take 100 million out of revenue sharing. And I don't know a way around it. Like, I'm not sure how this ends. Like, this could be done quickly. As ugly as it is, and teams have scrubbed players from their websites. So since it's multiple teams, that means the league said, that's it. And as bad as things have gotten in football and hockey and in other sports, I can't remember a league ever saying, okay, take all images of those players off the website now. What? Like, I just, I can't imagine that. That's really weird. That's a weird thing to do at the start of negotiations, to say, okay, it's midnight and you're all locked out and now none of you have faces. How do you feel now that you don't have faces? Like, it's weird, and they take, it's bizarre, and reading through it, it feels like really high school the way this is being done. And again, it's kind of a both sides thing. Like, when I heard that they were having a negotiation and it lasted 7 minutes before Major League Baseball walked out, it's like, 7 minutes? That's it? Seriously, 7 minutes. Meaning it wasn't actually a meeting to have any kind of discussion. It was just basically a hi. Hate you guys. We hate you too. All right, well, this has been fun. I'm going to finish my donuts, and then I'm going to leave. That way, that'll take 6.5 other minutes. So it looks like I spent time in here discussing things, but we really hate you, and we really hate you. Well, that's nice. I'm glad that we've got this all squared away. And players apparently advocated for changing up the draft so that it helps out the small market teams. Eh, again, and this is something that baseball I think needs to work on, because there are certain teams that lose all the time, and I don't think the owners care. And I don't think that it's a concern to them that the team is just failing. And when they churn out a really good prospect, off to Boston you go. Year 5, year 6, whatever it takes to get to free agency, you're gone. And seeing teams win a championship and then have to tear it down because they can't afford to keep anybody, it's tough. And again, a salary cap doesn't fix everything, but it might fix some of that. I don't think the owners or the players have any interest in it, because I haven't seen anything unless something changes between now and when they actually have an agreement. I find it weird too, the owners saying that they've done the lockout now because they don't want it to affect next season. But the way they've done it, it's going to cause a lot of harsh feelings on the owner or on the union side of things. So they might just dig in. Yeah, the players make a lot of money. They can afford to dig in. Some of these players can afford to dig in and just wipe out next season if that's what it's going to take. And the way this sounds at the start of it, it's reminding me a lot of the NHL's wiped out 2004-2005 season, where it's bubbling for years, it's coming, and it doesn't feel like there's any urgency to prevent it. The union and the league should have been sitting down having daily meetings for months. Knowing this moment was coming, knowing there was a lockout that was looming, they should have been sitting down, hammering things out, so that at the very least, when midnight strikes on the agreement, they can say, hey, so time is up, but we've already hammered out these details here. In good faith, we're not going to lock them out, and now we're going to go ahead and cram through the rest of this. And that's what they should be doing. They should be sitting there and working it out. But they've dug in. They're having separate press conferences, and it's something that, again, we've seen in other sports because it's public relations. The biggest problem baseball's going to have is you have these billionaire owners. You have baseball players who make way, way more money than I really think. And it's all a matter of how much money the league generates, right? So I don't want to say they don't deserve the money, because, yeah, if the league's generating that amount of money, without the players, you don't have a league, so you don't generate that money, so they should get their share. But it just feels like it's silly money that's getting thrown around at guys. And so I'll see articles like, do you think this guy's worth $40 million a year? And immediately my answer is no. But again, there's the business model as it is, and the players are getting their share of it. And it all comes back to that old argument of, so if I sit down with my boss and I say, I think I'm worth $50 an hour, and he goes, okay, here's $50 an hour. And then my coworkers find out, and they're like, why don't we get $50 an hour? He goes, fine. All right, you're all making $50 an hour. And then 2 weeks later, he's out of business because he can't afford to pay everybody $50 an hour. Is that on me, the worker? Or is that on the boss for not realizing I need to actually have money to keep this company afloat? And so when a player sits down with a GM and he goes, yeah, I think $25 million a year, 4 years sounds good. And he looks and he goes, $100 million? Sure, why not? At that point, the onus is on the general manager. At that point, the onus is on the owner who signed off on it. So we're in that space now in baseball. We've been in other sports. I've been over this many, many times, hockey related, where the arguments between millionaires and billionaires, also, although some baseball players are close to being billionaires, and so it is hard to get the public to feel bad for players who are making $20 million a year to catch a baseball and smack a baseball around and scratch themselves. And it is also hard for fans to feel bad for a billionaire owner who has to pay those millionaires their money. So the PR fight that's going on, I don't think scrubbing all their pictures and all their mentions and articles is anything more than childish by the Major League Baseball. I am shocked Major League Baseball did that. Baseball players responding by going on their social media and taking those blank images and making that their pictures. Good answer. That's a good answer. It's fun. It's, a way to vent their frustrations and say, hey, we know what you did, without, really escalating things. But it's going to escalate and it's going to get ugly. And I'd like to apologize to baseball fans everywhere. I started collecting baseball jerseys 2 years ago. Because, I thought, yeah, I can cover baseball when hockey's not running. So with COVID shutting everything down in March of 2020. Eventually, baseball's running, hockey's not. So I covered it, got some more baseball jerseys, and now it's dead. So on some level, I feel like I jinxed it. On some level, I feel like as soon as I started getting into baseball, all of a sudden there was, there's a lockout coming. It's like, really? But I've got these snazzy jerseys, and I don't want there to be a lockout coming. And here we are, the lockout's here. So I've still got all these nice baseball jerseys right here, waiting to go. And yeah, the one thing too is that for owners saying, well, we want to make sure this doesn't affect games, right? But players have already pointed out if they were getting therapy through the team for physical ailments in the off season, they have now been locked out. So they're now left to their own devices. And so what do you do with them now? What about rookies too, right? What about players who play winter ball and all that stuff? And anybody who's going to be affected by this, while it may not affect, opening day yet, it's already affecting players. So the idea of, well, we're going to do this, we're not going to affect as much, it is. And the owners know what it's going to affect because they have all these details all mapped out. So, question I have for people watching this. Owners, players, or that's it, I'm done. The greed has finally made me say I'm giving up on baseball. I remember that being a sentiment coming out of 94 when the season was wiped out with the strike. I'd be interested to know how people feel right now, all these years later, with a lockout taking place, which has the same effect as a strike. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And I hope this is short. I hope this is not a long-term lockout that affects next season and all this, because honestly, baseball is a sport that's already been losing young fans. It's already a sport that's fandom gets older and older every year because young people are more likely to want to watch basketball or football. So, or just do other things. Like sports in general are not as popular with the younger generation as they are with my generation and older. I noticed that with my son when he was in high school. I was like, really, kids are not as sports centered when it comes to professional sports now. And it didn't feel like it anyways as they were when I was a kid. So that it feels like that's something that's been shifting, and baseball might be shooting themselves in the foot, and that's both the unions and the owners. But let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.